Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto. Thank you so kindly for being part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today, as usual. Let me get my thing up here with our great folks from Substack and the great folks from the other chat. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Okay, I'll let you know in a minute, my dear brother, Patrick Magner. All right, let's see what we've got here. I think I've got that connected. That's connected. That's connected. And that's connected. All our networks are on the go. The first person in the chat today is Patrick Magner. He wins the gold medal today. Second by the one and only La Preciosa, La Hermosa, Yvette Avery Herod from Atlanta, Georgia. Patrick is from Houston. We also have Harry Denson bringing up the third place from Missouri, Texas, and Jacqueline Kempisi from Katy, Texas. La Profesora, La Licenciada, the most important profession in the world, Jacqueline Kempisi. We also have Eric Hayes from where again? From Kingwood, Atascocita, my good brother who lives in a different state of reality, but we love him anyway. Anyway, folks, we're going to have a great show for you today. As usual, we start late with the first 40 or so folks not being seen in the chat, but with us on Substack, subsequently, we've got James Sarantinos, Lanil Marcia J, Jeannie Helton, Gretchen, and more coming up. Anyway, I tell you what, before I start with my videos, I got two videos, an 11-minute and a 7-minute. So let's go ahead and bring Patrick. Go ahead and call, and we'll give you the platform, sir. We'll give you that necessary platform, my brother. Come on in. And let's see what else I got here. I better tell her that I'm going to call her back. That is one of the, that's a head honcho from our network. Go ahead and call in. Anyway, folks, we have a great show for you today. But while we wait for our brother to call in, I want to remind you of something. The commotion that is currently occurring in LA, right, is on approximately 4 city blocks. 4 city blocks. That is equivalent to 1% of 1 square mile. That is 1% of 1 square mile, okay? Los Angeles is over 500 square miles. So the commotion that we're seeing in 1% of LA is what all the mainstream media is concentrated and centralizing on. Don't believe it. This is a distraction from the big bad bill. We cannot forget that. We got to keep on with that, brothers and sisters. So let's go ahead. Brother Patrick Magner, how you doing, sir?
Hey, good afternoon. How are you?
I am doing fine, my brother. Talk to me.
I wanted to talk a little bit about how we're analyzing, not you and I, but just the country as a whole are analyzing these protests. I appreciate you switching back and forth from your levels on. Yeah, well, actually, I was going to say your choice of vocabulary. So I'm going to say that the way people are connecting the events around the protests with the protesters seems very, very odd to me. And everybody's accepted it. Even you this morning, not directly, but when Brian called in, he immediately started talking about protesters and misbehavior, right?
Yes,
okay,
sir.
So he's conflating two different events that are actually independent from each other.
Okay.
So, and the reason why I say that is that we have absolutely no evidence that the protest led to this They might have been a veil for it, but people are waiting for an opportunity for something. So
Wait,
what I would like to
Patrick,
say,
let me ask you this because I'm probably misunderstanding that the protest led to what?
to looting and burning cars, which I agree with you isn't happening on a large scale.
I got
and
you.
I actually think that calling cars into an area and setting them on fire is quite clever, because we're turning something that people are just being clever at their approach. But we don't know that those people are actually the protesters.
Very true.
And even if a protest on a very small level has some incidents, that does not make a protest wrong.
I agree 100%.
A lot of people are trying to find that. What's that?
Now, okay, I agree with you 100%. What I don't know that I accept that I said anything different or I implied anything different, and I want you to tell me, where do you think I implied differently?
I'm a little scatterbrained in the way I'm trying to convey what I'm trying to say. What I am saying is that we as Americans are trying to connect mischievous events and illegal events with protesters. They're happening at the same time. They're happening at the same time, and they're happening in the same areas. We can all agree on that, but we have no evidence past that. So
look, I agree with you there. I agree with you, and let me put it further. And I thought I alluded to that not only in this protest, but I think I alluded to it with what occurred in Madison, Wisconsin. Not Madison, Wisconsin. What was the name? The place in Wisconsin that they burned, a whole lot of buildings burned, and I think I equated that in Minneapolis as well. That in fact we have evidence that there were provocateurs, and likely right-wing provocateurs that were doing a whole lot of that to make the protest seems like it was a violent protest.
Yes. And we've had other events, just natural events where chaos ensues that have nothing to do with protests, and they look just like this. Mm-hmm. And we also have a parade coming up this weekend. This parade coming up this weekend will absolutely have some mischief thrown in with it. And are we going to attribute that to the person throwing the parade?
No.
Are we going to blame the military people involved in the parade?
No.
Okay. And I can even tell you this. There will be emergency staff. There'll be people trying to rush people to a hospital that will have to go around this parade that might lose their life or have complications. Are we gonna blame the president and the military for that?
I see where you're going. Now I see where you're going. There's a valid reason for this protest, the inhumane behavior of our federal government. While we have these folks that are protesting, that other instigators come in and do things that are wrong doesn't take away from the importance, necessity, and what should be done, which is in fact the protest.
Okay. And then now let me link these two. The parade is voluntary. The protest is necessary. The protest was pushed upon us because we had no other choice. This parade is a luxury item.
Actually, it's more than a luxury item. But let's even go a little bit deeper than that, Patrick. First of all, you're absolutely correct. The parade is a luxury item that's costing us a whole lot of money. And even as we had Doge go out there and talk about wasteful spending, talk about the wasteful spending that goes into this type of parade, not only for bringing all those people to all those tanks, etc., to Washington, D.C., but for the streets that are going to get torn up from having tanks going through the streets. Secondly, if you want to talk about wasteful spending, even as it has been proven that this 4-block area did not require 4,000 National Guards and 700 Marines to secure, because they're doing absolutely nothing. The LAPD is doing all the work along with the county sheriff, etc. That's $135 million. Again, that is $0.13 billion that we're using because we have a president who is lying to his constituency. Go ahead, brother.
Well, we're saving some money on cots and food because we're not feeding those soldiers and we're not giving them anywhere to sleep.
Actually, I want to say this. I don't want to fall into the same crap that they do. Yeah, those soldiers.
Yes, sir, I understand. Yeah, but that was easy.
I know that was easy. But look, those soldiers were on the ground lined up. But you and I both know that those soldiers are going to be taken care of. So I mean, let's not fall into into what they do some crazy lies and believe it. Our soldiers are, as far as when they're in active duty, they're going to be taken care of. When they're not taken care of is when they are no longer active duty, when they're veterans, and we try to deny them their health care. We try to deny them their pension. We try to deny them all the things that they have earned by serving us. Your thoughts?
I have a family member going through that right now. He got eye surgery and a bunch of things done because he knew it was coming, and it's already happening to him.
This has been going on for a long time. We love to send them to war. We love to sing glory, glory, hallelujah. And then we take their money and we don't give them what they're worth. Anyway, what else, my brother?
Yeah. Nothing. Just the biggest thing I wanted to connect between the parade and the riots, or the riots was something that was a last measure. And we were given no other choice. They are defending their community against somebody that lied to them, and then the exact same things and the same type of damage to our people and our civilization will be done on behalf of a parade.
Thank you, my brother. You nailed it. And by the way, is my new friend listening, or is she at work?
She's told me that she started as I see it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Anyway, keep me posted, and let's go over coffee and talk about it when she's done. All right?
Sounds great. Thank you.
Take care, brother. You have a good one. Anyway, folks, we have a great show for you today. Welcome, Don Buckler. America is being wasted by an abusive fraudster, correct? Susan Jagoda says it's abuse of power, fraud, waste, and abuse. I got a new person. Nina Diane Bruinton says Boogaloo saw the Pepe the Frog patch on a Boogaloo mansion within Black Lives Matter. Cars burning probably. J6 send fires. Proud Boys infiltrated. Peaceful BLM march back then. I remember that well. Welcome aboard. Do you lie? Stephanie McMorris, Just Less One, Roy Gerber, John A. How you doing, John? Did you find anybody yet? Michael Bennett, Terry A. Welcome aboard. Jen LaFleur, welcome aboard. G. Beard, welcome aboard. Martha Masters, Meg and Sherrod Bural, Patricia Nolan, Gertrude, Marcia J. Jane Helton, Leon, James Sarantino. Thank you guys for all being here. Of course, we have our resident hater in Mr. Greg Cisak with us as well. Lee Grant from Montgomery County. Let's see. Jane Daigle. How you doing, my brother? And let's see what else we got. Thank you guys for being here. Okay, let's get to our first video. I love what Bernie Sanders did here. Let's do it. Then let's go ahead and talk about it. Para ver, comenzando ahora. Bernie Sanders did exactly what he needed to do in his recent interview with Dana Bash and CNN on State of the Union. The mainstream media has a tendency to pick up talking points from the right wing, pick up talking points from neoliberals. In other words, as it turns out, the debt is caused by all these entitlements that we pay out. Hogwash. Social Security is paid for by your FICA taxes, period. Secondly, Medicare is paid for. How? By your Medicare taxes, 3.8%, I think it is, on all your income. And it even includes a certain amount of payments on capital gains, unlike FICA, unlike your certain other taxes. But again, the narrative that they want most Americans to believe is that somehow Medicare and Social Security are the ones that are burning or blowing a hole in the federal deficit, in the federal debt. I've shown you where those bills are. I don't know if you remember when we used to talk about lock boxes for putting away your Social Security money. When your Social Security money comes in, it just immediately goes out as part of the general funds, and the IOU is written to say, that money was placed there. The reality is we've made many adjustments to Social Security so that it is self-sufficient. In other words, it's not being paid out of general funds. And the concern is that with the baby boomers and slower birth rates, etc., that would not be self-sustaining, but all of that could be protected by simply increasing the taxes, not on some false limit on your income, but to tax all income for Social Security, in which case Social Security would fall. So we cannot buy into the narrative that Social Security is busting the budget or that Medicare is busting the budget. All these things can be accounted for and paid for. What's busting the budget is we are not collecting the taxes necessary based on folks' income. And that's why we are migrating all our monies upwards. So when Dana Bash tries to imply to Bernie Sanders that somehow the problem is Medicare, he's talking about Medicaid, but Medicare is going to be a problem as well. Bernie Sanders did the right thing to school her, as we continuously try to school the rest of the population, that other countries are doing much better than we are because they handle healthcare better than we do. Not the best. Again, the best thing is that healthcare should not be in the for-profit domain at all. It should not be in the capitalist market at all, because when you're sick, you don't have choices. You can't say, you know what, your price is too high. I don't want the healthcare. You are, as a person who wants to live, as a person who wants to be there for their kids, you can't do that. So there's a monopoly for anybody. Just being in healthcare gives you a monopoly. Well, it's not really a monopoly, right? But some kind of a opoly. So listen to how Bernie Sanders handled Dana Bash, and then we'll get back on the other side.
You were talking mostly about Medicaid, which is already in this bill, those cuts that you were describing. One of the issues is Medicare, whether or not there will be changes in order for the Republicans to get votes amongst themselves. Medicare is one of the biggest drivers of federal spending. Are you concerned about America's runaway national debt, and would changes to entitlements like Medicare be necessary to try to rein that in?
Donna, let's talk about healthcare for a moment. As I hope most people know, not only are we the only major country on earth not to guarantee healthcare to all people, we are spending over twice as much per capita on healthcare as the people of any other country. The function of the American healthcare system is to make huge profits for the insurance companies and the drug companies. And if the Republicans are serious about cutting healthcare costs, you don't throw people off of Medicaid or Medicare. You have the guts to take on the insurance companies who are ripping off the American people every single day. We're spending $14,500 per person on healthcare. Outrageous, unsustainable, by far the highest prices in the world. But the Republicans would rather throw people off of Medicare, children off of Medicaid, rather than take on the insurance companies or the power of the drug companies.
So, folks, let's be clear here. Let's be very, very clear. Don't let the false narrative that we need to cut Medicare. Don't go into the false narrative that we need to cut Social Security. We need to expand Social Security. Social Security needs to really mean what it's there for. Social Security, and we need to pay for it through taxes by taxing all income. Same applies to Medicare. We need to make sure that all income is taxed for Medicare, and above and beyond that, we need to get rid of Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage is a fraud. It is nothing more than private insurance. Remember, there was a time private insurance did not insure old people because they cost too much. After the government decided to take and insure older people, then comes the private sector and say, okay, let me administer Medicare for you in a private manner. And of course, it makes no sense. It will never be, you can never get the private sector to be more efficient than the public sector, ever. The only reason that is there for that, a private sector, is for things that don't matter. You can choose to buy a dress or not. You can choose to go to a restaurant or not. You can choose to buy a car or not. Those things belong in the capitalist structure. But all the things that you absolutely depend on for your vital survival belongs in a collective market, in a public market, where it's not at the whims of some oligarch whether you'll live or die, whether you'll be whether you'll have success or not. Let me tell you something, folks, because we have been so hoodwinked. The first thing that we learned is to disregard, to not trust government. We make government bad, and that is why Republicans are so good at making government bad, because they need you to believe government bad so that you would go to the next inefficient thing. And that next inefficient thing is what again? Oh, yeah, the private sector. Look, simple math. This is what they want you to forget. For anything that you do, for any product that is made, and let's go ahead and talk about products that are already in existence. For anything that's made, right? If you have to pay, in addition to the cost of manufacturing, in addition to the cost of the product, in addition to the cost of the service, if somebody who goes ahead and hold capital in your company has to always get a dividend, meaning just because you help us buy the buildings, you help us buy the machines, you get a dividend. Likewise, an executive get big bonuses, etc. All these things have to be paid. You have advertising costs in the private sector. And I'm saying that's good for a restaurant. That's good for selling a car. It doesn't matter because you can do without it if they don't price it the way you want it to be priced. But it will always cost more. If the government were to have a car company, right? That car company would have a lower expense value than the private sector. I am not suggesting that the government go into building cars because there's a certain amount of innovation one leaves when things are centralized. But there are certain things that should be centralized. What should be centralized? When I say centralized, I mean that you don't need a lot of different things out there. When we have an established development of something, all right, let's go ahead and talk about insulin, right? Insulin should never appear, and it's something to heal you. Insulin should never appear in the private market because there is no further development of insulin. Now, if somebody develops some magical insulin that can stay in your bloodstream for a long time and break down over time, it is okay for that person to develop it and then release it, and eventually it becomes a commodity. Right? But the thing about it is here's the reality. Most medicines, most of all these things that we innovate with have always started with government funding. When it comes to NASA, place that I worked for, NASA was the genesis of the microprocessor, certain microprocessors, certain core memories. So many different things that all of you who pay your taxes, all of you who invested your money in your government, you guys developed it. Then some rich fat boy comes along and says, I can do something with that. Invest in it, capitalizes it, make a whole lot of money and charges you an arm and a leg. That's what they do with all the drugs that we create. That is what they do. Okay. So this is what we have to come up against. Separate the markets. The things that are important to us, we keep it in a collective. In other words, we should have socialized healthcare. Absolutely so. When it comes to energy, think about this, folks. I want to give you guys an example here, right? We purportedly have energy problems, right? We don't really have energy problem. We have a Bruce Pollard from Orlando. Welcome, Bruce. He's actually from Kingwood, but he's in Orlando right now. I want you guys to think about this. We are leaving the largest power station, the largest sources of electricity behind. What do I mean by that? Every time I fly over a city, every time I fly over small towns, I'm looking at rooftops, right? I'm looking at rooftops, one of the great power generation stations in the world. If we weren't dependent on capitalism, which a capitalist says, you know what can it cost me to electrify every roof? Let's see if there's money. Oh, there's only a 2% profit in that. I can't do that. So society suffers from a benefit it could have had, right? From a benefit it could have had because nobody has been able to find a way not to make an inordinate amount of profits on it. Let me give you a quick story about my house. And Bruce, you remember this. I was considering putting solar panels on my home. And the guy comes out to my house and he maps out. They came with the satellite picture of my roof, mapped it out, the whole works. By the time it was all over, they're giving me a quote. How much do you pay for electricity? What do you need to know that for? Just tell me how much it is to put the panels on. How much you pay for it. What they wanted to do is see how much I paid for electricity, arrange the panel financing in such a manner that it is X percentage less than my electric rate, and of course none of that is guaranteed. And then reverse compute the price of the panels. When it was all over, they wanted $90-something thousand to put panels on my roof. I balked because what they did is they looked at me and they thought I was an idiot. They didn't know I was an engineer. They didn't know I was going to do numbers. They just knew that that's what they were going to charge me. When I complained, when I said, oh, no, I wouldn't do it, a few days later, the same company calls back, and this is what they said. I just want to show you what's wrong with capitalism. The person calls back and they says, my boss said to really try to get you to sign up. He's going to take a big cut in his bonus to do this. And then I said, okay, what would be the price be? It went from $90-something thousand to $60-something thousand. So that is telling me that the wiggle room on those panels that they were going to provide, they were just going to eat yet another $30,000, right? And if they're selling it for $60,000, they're still making a profit. So I said, nah, $60,000 make no sense either. Couldn't afford that anyway. So I said, no. Another company calls up. This one came from Norman. Same amount of panels, same types of panels. They come ahead and they give me a quote. How much? $40-something thousand for this one. So we're gone from $90,000. And by the way, a lot of people would have taken that $90,000 because they make it look good. They finance it over 20-something years. And even probably after 10 years, the panels will be generating that less electricity. So you're screwed anyway you go. But that's what capitalism does, right? It screws you. So they go ahead and they said, oh, no, this guy offered $40,000. I said, no. By the time it was all over, the company that offered me it for $40,000 was then willing to do it for $28,000. Of course, I said no again. But my point is, that is in the energy market, right? You cannot establish a reliable, a sustainable type of energy system when you have thugs and charlatans that are the ones that are selling these products, these things. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Now think about this. If we decided that the government would pass a law that says all roofs will have solar panels and it will be subsidized by the government. Think about this, right? All roofs will have solar panels subsidized by the government, and we create the internet working, right? To have that connected, the government, and again, you get all electricity, and what you get, and the only electricity you pay for is the delta for that electricity plus some amortized cost of the panels, right? If everybody did that, we would have, because again, if you go through your neighborhood, most roofs don't have solar panels. If every roof had solar panels on them, think about what that would do to that would be a national policy that saves us a lot of energy, saves the environment. All of that would work, but it'll never happen because capitalism will stop it from happening, because unless they can find a way to rip you off, they're not going to do it. Now, we as a people, we should be able to tell our government that is a type of policy we want and implement it, and don't allow the profit motive to come in. In other words, don't then allow contractors who have the right to go ahead and say, okay, the panel is not at cost, but the panel costs this. Allow none of that. And watch how fast we get it. Patrick says, I installed a 6 kilowatt array on a hunting camp for $3,200 15 years ago. Amazing, isn't it? And now that it's commercialized, it is crazy. All right, let's see what else we have here. Nina Dan Brewington says, Singh of USA is low minimum wage rate, increased Republicans in Congress, decades refuse increased minimum wage, Medicaid approval, and income goes by amount. I hear you. I know what you're trying to say. Just Less says, our infrastructure is over 50 years old. Nothing is updated. All these years, they take all. We pay extra to keep up equipment up, and now they can't afford to update. What? That's why we pay all the stupid fees. Look, we have allowed our economic system to really screw us. That's what we're doing. Anthony Lefranco says, unbridled capitalism is predatory, and you're absolutely right. About solar, it's the loopholes our government gives the sellers. Exactly. I've got some insights. Well, I'd love to hear your insights. Drop me a line. Let's see what else we got here. Anthony Lefranco says, energy barons screw Texans, don't they? Yeah. Let me tell you better about screwing Texas. You know how fracking is very popular here in Texas, right? And if you talk about getting rid of fracking, I'm coming with the second video in a minute. If you get rid of fracking, it's a problem, right? Because you're anti the oil company. Well, yes, definitely I'm anti the oil company. But here's the deal. Fracking creates a lot of polluted water waste. A lot. Now, what is ironic is what they do with that leftover bad water, etc., is injected into rocks, wells deep under the earth, right? They just inject that into the well under very high pressures, right? And then they tap the well. The problem is a lot of times this high pressure cracks the rock and shows up miles down the road. And that is what's happening in West Texas right now. A lot of farmers are having pools of dirty water show up in the middle of their prairies. Bad water, smelly water, water that's killing their crops, water that's killing their stock, their livestock. But you know what? They don't want regulations. You know what? They want fracking. I mean, they are convinced that regulations are bad. Well, the lack of regulations made it that those companies that blew those things into the hole, they followed the law. And in following the law that was written incorrectly without regulations, it is okay for those other people's properties to be polluted. And there's not a damn thing that gets done about it. We have to learn that, folks. We have to learn that. Anyway, let's go to my next topic, which is, of course, Khanna came out with the progress. He sort of, I shouldn't say release, but he spoke about the progressive bill. The progressive bill to reduce the budget. And I did a little speech about that this morning. So I want to play what I spoke about this morning so that I don't have to repeat it or forget what I said. So here we go. The progressive budget. And it was talked about yesterday by Congressman Khanna. Now, as congressional Republicans push a mega bill that would add an estimated $2.4 trillion to the national debt, while giving lavish tax breaks to rich and gutting anti-poverty initiatives for the working class, Congressman Khanna on Tuesday unveiled a progressive plan to cut the deficit by what? $12 trillion. Remember, the big, beautiful bill, which we know better as the big bad bill, is going to increase the deficit from anywhere from $2.5 to $4 trillion. This bill by Khanna, it's not magical. $12 trillion reduction in bill. Can that be done? Well, guess what? Democrats did it before. I wasn't able to play the video that I had for you yesterday, but the last time we had a balanced budget was in the year 2000 when Clinton was leaving office. He had several years of balanced budgets and debt reduction. It's possible. And when you do that, your economy explodes as it did under Clinton. Everybody talks about the Reagan miracle. They don't talk about the Clinton super miracle, because under Reagan, we got on the order of 16 million jobs over his two terms, 4 years, 8 years in the White House. But under Clinton, and by the way, and in the process of getting $16 million, Reagan blew the budget by, in those days, $40 billion, much more than anybody at that time. And he got 16 million. That was Keynesian economics on steroids. He got 16 million jobs out of that. Clinton got himself 20 something. I think it was 21 million jobs or 22 million, somewhere around there, million jobs. But at the same time, not with a budget deficit, but with a budget surplus paying down the debt. And that doesn't get advertised. And why don't you think that is advertised? That isn't advertised because the way it was done, it was to raise taxes, not by a bunch, not by the 70% during the the Kennedy days for the highest tax rate, but by the 40% or so on income over a certain amount. In other words, if you make regular money, you don't pay a lot of taxes, but if you make an inordinate amount of money, you pay a larger marginal tax rate on that. And all of that together brought down the deficit by design. And also, there, other than those tax increases, there were also programs established. And these programs put money into people's pockets, which, because of a thing known as a concept in economics known as the marginal propensity to consume, which means if you give money to somebody who doesn't have money, they're going to spend it. And what does spending mean? Throwing that into the economy right away, buying more bread, milk, and all of that, which means the dairy guy gets more money for the extra cows that he has to milk. The farmer gets more money for the extra bread, the flour that's needed for the bread, etc. And the extra toy that you buy for your kid works all around because you are moving money from people who don't have a high marginal propensity to consume. In other words, if I have $1 billion and I get $1 million tax cut, am I going to put that $1 million into the economy? Hell no. There's nothing that is stopping me at all. Nothing that is stopping me at all from getting the things that I want. So I don't add any more to the economy. I don't spend any more by getting a tax cut if I'm wealthy. It doesn't work that way. But if I go ahead and tax the wealthy, and remember, all that wealth was made on your back anyways. If I tax the wealth, right, and I throw that back into the person's hand in the form of education, in the form of subsidies for healthcare, subsidies for all these other things, that is extra money that person has to throw into the economy. And they do it. And how do we know that? We have the Reagan, when it comes to successful presidents economically. We had the Reagan experiment where we increased the deficit. We got some jobs, but we exploded the deficit. And we have the Clinton example that we had a substantial surplus as well as an enormous amount of work because of more. We have the data, folks. We have the data to prove this stuff. And the reason the media does not centralize on this is that the solution is that the wealthy are going to pay more, deservedly so. Okay? The California Democrats' Progressive Deficit Reduction Plan, introduced in a report and floor speech, has 5 recommendations. Modernize the military, $850 billion. Get rid of upcoding and fraud, Medicare Advantage. And we shouldn't get rid of upcoding and fraud in Medicare Advantage. We need to get rid of Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage is a fraud on the American people. And anybody who sells Medicare Advantage, please feel free to call the program. Let's talk about how it really, really works. Call the program, please, my brothers and sisters who are out there convincing your mama, your daddy, and people to take Medicare Advantage. It is a fraud on the American people. Call, please call. And try to defend it. He gets another $170 billion by getting rid of fossil fuel subsidies, $200 billion by Medicare drug price control. Khanna's proposal points out that the Pentagon, which has a budget of nearly $1 trillion, has never passed an audit, and that getting ripped off by contractors is an issue not only at the Department of Defense, but across the federal government. So why are our bills so high by the federal government? Because who rips us off again? Private sector contractors. The $1 trillion Pentagon budget has never passed an audit. And you know what? When Doge came into the fold, they closed down stuff that keep people alive and things that murder people, like big bombs and all of that. None of that let's see where the money is going. None of that was looked into by Doge. But USAID cut over 200,000 people dead so far. We have to be honest with the way we look at these things. So the document also emphasizes the need to crack down on fraud involving Medicare Advantage and argues that there's absolutely no reason for Americans to pay 2 to 4 times more for prescriptions that people in Canada, Germany, or the UK pay. Let me just say one thing about a person policy that I know. They have an insurance policy for drugs. Guess what the drug company called and asked them? I'm not a drug company, it's an insurance company. Is it okay if we ship some of your drugs that you use, your medical drugs, from Canada? Of course, the person said yes. But think about that. Having to buy drugs from Canada to get a cost reduction, as opposed to us getting the right price for drugs that we use our tax dollars to develop. Specifically, Ro Khanna's proposal restores the domestic corporate tax rate to 28%, collects international corporate taxes, closes loopholes like carried interest, and adds 0.01 financial transaction tax. He also wants to make billionaires pay taxes on their wealth and loans on it, close inheritance tax loopholes, restore the top marginal tax rate at the 39.6%, reinstate Internal Revenue Service funding to go after tax cheats, and remove a cap that allows them to pay into the program at a fraction of the rate that most working class Americans pay. Exactly. Khanna, who is expected to run for president during the next cycle, also contrasted his plan with the budget reconciliation package currently moving through GOP. That is a big, bad bill. A GOP Congress. His reports asserts that the Republican legislation is not responsibility. It's a giveaway to the wealthy that stakes future generations with the bill. Lee the Bearcat from Austin, Texas. How about no subsidy or entitlement in government won't compute with a capitalist system? You have to have some sort of redistribution, or else the mathematical formula for capitalism is to take all. It is just that way. Look, the fact that capital grows at a faster rate than book pass interest and labor tells you that the formula for capitalism is to take all the wealth out of the lower classes and then ultimately have indentured servitude. That is just a formula. I didn't make it. That's just how it works. And it's simple. You have a pie that all of us participate in. It is growing. And if it's growing at 7% for capital, people who own capital, but if you have a passbook where you get payment for your passbook savings, you get 0.5% or 1% or whatever, and all the other income you have is through work, which gains 0% as far as wealth accumulation and capture. It actually tells you that eventually you move on to solely servitude. It's a mathematical formula, Lee the Bearcat. So saying we don't want redistribution in a capitalist society absolutely says that you are okay, that eventually we will all be indentured servants. Just remember that. That's the capitalist formula. I didn't make it. All right. In the chat, Cheryl Elkin says, good morning. Today's quote of the day for me: the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. A reminder that everything we do, no matter how small, it's moving the needle. Keep at it, everyone.
All right, folks. Let me just say that this is not just a plug for my book, but as I see it, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom. In there, I explained all the presidents, I think, up until Obama, and how they worked with jobs, etc., that you can see that I'm not just blowing smoke when I talk about what these presidents actually did. But the very important part of the book as well is how the economic system works. And I talk about how patents are a magical way that capitalism uses to screw you. And I use the example about seeds that farmers use, etc. I also point out a lot of different features within healthcare that screws us all. This is a simple book that everybody can understand. And I tell you, I wish, I'll be honest with you, I am going to plug the book. This book is not new, okay? I wrote this when I was extraordinarily upset. I was extraordinarily upset at how Obama was dealing with the healthcare and how there was no fight in Democrats. Democrats just didn't seem to be fighting the kind of fight by using all the evidence out there. And like I said, I know why. Because all of them ultimately are controlled by the people, their donors, etc. And their donors don't want them to completely show that this economic system is really there to screw most, so that a few can take advantage of it. So in here, if you take a look at my table of contents on the economy side,
I have it shown up where I says, I called it, I talked about taxation, patent law, military spending, free trade, government social services, the market, financial systems, where we go over derivatives and all those things that they screw you with. Easy to understand. Once you get this, nobody can look at you and say, you know what? I think what these people are saying is true. It's not. We have been so misinformed about our economic system. It is so hard to believe that folks don't want to believe you initially. But guess what? It's there. And what they always say, and it has all the receipts. So you can see that we're just not blowing through. So if you can go to politicsdoneright.com/books, right? You can actually get this book hard copy. But there's a better way to read this book and all our books, including How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relative Friends and Neighbors, Tribulations of an Afro-Latino Caribbean Man, and How to Make America Utopia. Become a paid subscriber of our newsletter, and all those books are there for you to read on Substack. You know what I mean? All of them are there for you to read on Substack. When I tell you, I put the effort into these books, but not only to do it in a way that isn't, when you hear a book from an economist, they tell you, well, if you look at the Laffer curve, I did mention the Laffer curve, but I actually explain all this stuff, in a way that's easily understood. So consider if you want hard copy, go to politicsdoneright.com/books. But if you just subscribe to our newsletter, you can read it all online. All right. I think that's all of the videos that I have for today. If anybody wants to call in, you can call at 7. Well, nope, that's the morning number. The afternoon number is 281-823-7747. The morning number is 281-8, this afternoon number is 281-823-7747. Give us a call if you want to go over further. The last subject that I have listed. Whoa, I didn't send this off to Daily Kos. Oh my God, I didn't send it. No wonder there were some missing people. All right, the last subject I wanted to talk about was from Joseph Givergisi, and he is I think he's still the president of. Bernie's group. What is it called again? What is Bernie's group called? Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Let's see if he's still the president. Our Revolution. Yep, he's still the executive director of Revolution. I interviewed him at Netroots last year. And when I interviewed him, we spoke a lot about this. But he has a new article that he wrote for Common Dreams called Authoritarianism Isn't Coming, It's Here. Authoritarianism isn't coming. It's already here. And he says the military is in the streets of Los Angeles. That image alone, armed National Guard troops that deployed by a sitting president against the will of local officials, should shake this country to its core. In other words, here is a state that is saying, we don't want you here. We can take care of our own security. Hey, Carl Cox, how you doing, buddy? I see you're in good conversation. And Lawrence Sims, Carl Cox from Riverdale, Georgia. Lawrence Sims from Powder Springs, Georgia. So he says, we should be going bat, crazy. The governor of California says, we don't want the military here. We can handle our own security. You send it anyway. So Joseph Givergisi says, we should be concerned. But it is not happening in isolation. It is part of a coordinated and escalating assault on democracy itself. All while in the backdrop, Congress is advancing a budget deal that expands military and ICE funding while slashing Medicaid nutritional assistance for millions of working class families. Again, just like third world countries, they invest in a lot of guns and bullets, while a lot of their population is starving, right? And on Saturday, Trump will stage a military parade in Washington, D.C., a grotesque celebration of state power at the very moment it is being used to crush dissent and consolidate control. We got to do something, folks. We are witnessing in real time the merger of authoritarianism and oligarchy. Trump is consolidating power not just through policy, but through spectacle, surveillance, and the criminalization of dissent. His targets include journalists, immigrants, students, union organizers, law firms, and civil societies. And all of those things he named are people that have already been arrested, thrown away. The journalists, some of them already got arrested, thrown out of the White House. Immigrants, some of them got thrown into gulags. Students, we know some of them were deported and thrown into gulags as well. Anthony Lefranco. How you doing, Anthony? Talk to me.
How are you?
I'm doing fine. Turn the radio down, my dear brother.
Yeah, I did. Never are what I'm watching on streaming is what you're doing at the same time. So I'm glad I'm in. Good.
Yes, you're in. Go ahead.
So you were just talking about authoritarianism. So for the protests this weekend, and I think being here in California, what I see from the protests, and which are mired by the, anarchists that want to come out, is we were seeing folks wave the Mexican flag, which I don't have a problem with, but you can see the whole patriotic idea of any other flag than the American flag, would have some sort of onus on it being unpatriotic. But we are from all those countries. And I guess I called in to be a voice to say this weekend, I'd love to see flags from every country flying as people come out for the, No King protest across the nation, because we are from all those countries. And that's kind of what made us the kick-ass country we are. That's my 2 cents. And I'm just wondering what other people think about the fact that there's other flags besides Americans people want to fly.
You know what? I so love that you said that. I just so love that you said that, because if you really want to know what made us great, with all our past, with all the indignities that we have done to become the United States of America, you are so right. You are so right. That if you take a look at the technology, I think the 10 of the last, I don't remember how many technological companies were put together by immigrants. If you take a look at one of the most successful groups in this country, you find out, oh my God, you mean Nigerians are some of the highest paid workers? If you take a look if you just take a look at what immigration and immigrants have done to this country that was created by immigrants, you would see that it was because of immigrants that we have the prowess that we do. And Donald Trump is doing all that is necessary to corrupt that. Even the workers let me tell you what else, Brother Franco. If you take a look at the buildings and the farming and all this stuff that makes that we produce more food than the rest of, than anybody else on a per acre basis. That we are on in North America. We're not at the equator. We are so good at these things. Now, I'm going to get slapped by my brother Patrick, because he's not into mechanized farming, and he's convincing me that we need to change our form of farming. But what I'm saying, all the things that we do is because of all that we have from foreigners that we all were at some time. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm all in on that. I mean, the road that was paved in America from my ancestors, for my family, is what oozes from, my pores. So, I'm the choir. I guess as you were talking about that, one of the things is for me is, what can we do and what can I do? This weekend there'll be protests. I'll be out, and I'm just thinking about how many people can fight together, but yet if what's called free speech, Fox propaganda and the like, if that can continue unchecked, then it's a much tougher battle than we should have to deal with if this is America.
Let me tell you,
knocking those. Yeah, go ahead.
I hope you listened to the piece that I did, and I'm going to just go over a couple of minutes over. If you listen to the piece by Eddie Glaude, Dr. Eddie Glaude, that I did, if not, go to my YouTube channel and check out the piece, the last thing I did on Eddie. Actually, go to the newsletter, because I wrote an article that corresponded to the video that goes into more detail. Eddie Glaude points out, is this who we are? Well, I think this weekend we can prove that this is not who we are. We can leave the MAGA folks and those who are deplorable, and I do say that, and I mean that this time. I'm not saying all MAGA is deplorable, but we have a lot of deplorable MAGA. For all those that are deplorable, they will get to see what it looks like for people who love each other, for people who want to move together. So I'm telling everybody, go Go out to your rallies. Be peaceful. If you have provocateurs, report the provocateurs. When I say provocateurs, people that will harm others or do something bad to humanity. Let's remember that.
Yeah.
Hey, give me a closer because I got to go.
Okay. Well, instead of going back to the other stuff, here's the thing about the anarchists that come out to the protests. Usually they'll have a megaphone. Usually they'll be dressed to be able to run and be, get clear of people, maybe have a mask, and they'll go from group to group within a protest to try to instigate and then move on. You can point them out to the authorities.
There you go.
That's my 2 cents.
I got you. Thank you, brother.
Right.
You have a good one. You take care, my friend. All right, folks, let me tell you, Maywood, I got your videos. I haven't looked at all of them yet. But good work, brother. Also, do you lie? No, I will be at a rally this weekend. You bet your life I will. I won't be just sipping coffee. I will be at a rally, and anybody who comes out to Kingwood, we're having a rally at the intersection of Kingwood Drive and Westlake Houston Drive. We will have a whole bunch of folks rallying out there, reclaiming our democracy. All right, I'm late. I want to suggest to all that please go ahead and become subscribers to our newsletter. How do you do that? You can become a subscriber to our newsletter by going to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. I'm putting that into the I'm putting that into both chats. Please, that is how we actually fund what we're doing. The newsletter is our basic funder of what we're doing. So I'm asking those of you who have the wherewithal to please become subscribers of our newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. I got to get out of here. Love you all. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what?
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.